Okay. All right. We will get the show on the road. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad you were able to make it. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a different environment than it has been, working from home amid some of the upticks that we've seen in COVID. So you get to see a little bit into my life outside the office. Today, we're hoping to talk about the Sage Rutty-Tele, talk about dodging bullets in your 401k plan, the part two of mistakes that we see in 401ks. Quick introduction. My name is Craig Gingerich. I'm a certified financial planner, accredited investment fiduciary, and a certified health savings advisor here at Sage Rutty. If you've missed a session, feel free to go to our website, sagerutty.com/telek or tele-k.com. Will lead you both to the same spot. If you have an idea, if you have any questions, my contact information is right on screen. As you might imagine, as we start getting into these, after a certain number of them, you start running out of ideas, or at least I do. If you have an idea, please send them my way. Happy to talk about what's most valuable for you. So without further ado, what are we talking about today? As I mentioned, dodging bullets. So these are 5 more mistakes, 5 things that I see people run into issues. I really love any chance I get to put a GIF into my PowerPoints. I love seeing Neo here. You can tell he is avoiding these bullets that you could potentially run across in your 401k. So first bullet to dodge is outdated beneficiary forms. This is a really, really common one. I think the most common mistake that I see, and particularly if it's an old account, that beneficiary forms are definitely out of date. I always love to know, or just think to yourself, when was the last time that you took a look at your beneficiary form? Right? For me and for a lot of people is, okay, when I first set up my account, I'll think about, have you had a family change since then? Have you had a job change? Have you had a 401k platform change? Have there been a change in your estate planning, or have there been estate tax changes, right? The law around it has been changing constantly. Do you even remember who's on your beneficiary form? I like to call out 2 of the bullets on here, particularly job change and platform change, because they can be related to each other. So if you change jobs, first off, it's really easy to forget on an old 401k who is your beneficiary at that time, right? So, okay, 10 years ago at an old job, I had a 401k, and on that I listed my roommate, and now it's 10 years later, and that's not really reflective of what my life looks like. So if you don't roll your account over, if you're thinking, oh, what harm is it to leave it there? Just remember, you need to update the beneficiaries. Also, platform changes. So if you're in a 401k plan that we've helped you change platforms, we try and remind people, bring your beneficiary form with you, update your beneficiary forms at the new place, because old platforms are not responsible for it. Where it becomes really scary is if you have an old 401k and they change platforms. So my old job was at Schwab and they changed over to Principal. In that process, it's really, really, really common for them to lose the beneficiary forms in the process, especially if you filled it out online. It doesn't transfer. Your HR department there is responsible for it, but HR people have more than enough on their plate. Worrying about prior employees' beneficiary forms and whether those transferred properly is not on the top of their to-do list, and nor should it be. You have that responsibility as the owner of the account. Make sure and go and update that, or just roll the account into your current 401k. Second, loans. Loans can be a really big bullet to dodge. I like to point out, it can be a lifesaver. Honestly, it can definitely be a lifesaver. It's better than going into a crazy amount of credit card debt. It's at the end of the day, you are paying the funds back to yourself, and I think that's where a lot of people stop in the consideration. But it's not the full story, right? You're really enjoying the benefits today and hurting future you, and that comes in the form of many people decrease their savings rate to compensate for it. I was doing $300 per paycheck. Now I got to drop that to $100 because I have a $200 loan out there. It's good to remember, it's still a loan. It's not just free money. It's not just like, oh, I took out $5,000, that's it. That means every paycheck is going to be lower because you have to be paying it back. And really commonly we see it become a revolving door. I took out loan 1, Now I have to pay off loan 1 so I can take out loan 2. And it just becomes a perpetual need for those loans. I like to compare loans to EpiPens, right? So it can be a lifesaver in the moment. If you need it, absolutely take it, but recognize that there's long-term costs on your account, on your financial future, on your ability to help you and your family retire. Loans can be really damaging to that. All right, so number 3, the third bullet to dodge is nearsightedness. And again, another common one. I see a lot of people, I put the picture on the screen because I see a lot of people that the consideration around investments for many people starts at what's on the news today. Okay, the election's on the news. How do I feel about that? That's going to determine how I want to invest. The pandemic's on the news. That's going to drive whether I want to be in fund A or fund B or invest at all. And I want to remind people, don't drive your 40-year investment strategy based off of a 40-minute news program, right? The headlines of today are not going to be the deciding factor on whether your investments are going to grow or be larger in 20 years from now. At the end of the day, what's going to determine that is the companies that are within your investments, right? So instead of looking at the newspaper, look at your fund profile and say, hey, I own this large cap fund. Underneath that, I have the largest, most profitable, most innovative companies in the world. Okay, I feel all right. They're gonna be okay through whatever, chaos or whatever, panic of the day might be on the news. At the end of the day, I'm still happy that I'm owning shares of Amazon. I'm still happy I have shares of Johnson & Johnson, right? Those are gonna drive me long term. The news is just the if it bleeds, it leads mentality. All right, number 4, fourth bullet to dodge, treating retirement as the finish line. So I want to start with 2 questions. The first question is, if you had 12 months until retirement, how would you invest? And many people answer that and say, okay, we got a raised hand. Great. Love to hear how you would invest. Most people answer pretty conservatively, right? I'd invest pretty conservatively if I was retiring in a year from now. The second question is, how would you invest if you had a 30-year time horizon? And I'm sure that some of you are kind of putting together, this is the same question looked at from 2 sides, right? Recognizing retirement is not the finish line. I sincerely hope that you're not spending all of your retirement assets on day 1. Instead, it's recognizing I have to spend some of my 401k on day 1. I also have to spend some of my 401k on year 31, right? I need this money to continue to grow and continue to outpace inflation so that I can afford to live, right? I got to put food on the table and gas in the car. I don't know about you guys. I'd love to have some fun in retirement. If I start retirement with $1 million and it's that same money spending from that for the next 30 years, it's going to buy me less than half as much in 30 years, right? Inflation doubles the cost of everything about every 25, 26 years. So just think about that. I'm making 50 grand is going to be the same as making 25 grand in future money. It's crazy to think about. So don't treat your investments as I just got to make it to retirement and then I'm putting on the brakes and going all the cash or going all the bonds. Recognize you need stock to be able to outpace inflation. All right. Number 5, the last bullet to dodge here is tax confusion. So doing things tax inefficiently and ineffectively. So a couple warning signs that you may be doing this. First is that you're stockpiling too much cash. So a strong believer, you need to have an emergency fund, have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses held in a safe account off to the side. But beyond that, you're now looking at dollars that if they're not earmarked for something, they're not really doing anything for you, right? If you need to have 30 grand on hand, but you have 100 grand on hand, that means $70,000 could be put to work for you. And by having it in a bank account, you're even paying in the tiny amount of interest that you're earning, you're then paying tax on that interest. The second is if you have a brokerage account earmarked just for retirement. So I brought on some new clients recently. They're fantastic. They're saving like crazy, really taking retirement seriously. And they but they're in a spot that they're not maxing out their 401k, but they're putting 20 grand per year into a brokerage account. Well, the brokerage account, all of that growth is taxable, right? Versus if you did in the 401k, it's growing tax deferred rather than showing up on your tax return every year. Or if you do the Roth 401k, it's growing completely tax free. If you're saving for retirement, there's tax efficient ways to go about it. Third, if you're paying college tuition out of pocket, there's a more efficient way to do it, particularly in New York State. So in New York State, we have access to what they call a 529 account. This is basically an investment account just for higher education expenses. When you fund into that account, you get a New York State tax deduction up to the first $10,000 per year. So if normally you're paying for your son's college tuition, right? Every semester you write a $5,000 check. If you are writing it directly to the institution, it continues on as normal. If instead you write a $5,000 check on Monday to your 529 account, then on Tuesday, distribute from your 529 account to the institution. In that process, you've generated a $5,000 New York State tax deduction. Crazy, right? It'd be nice if it was at a federal level, but even at a state level, that's saving you a not insignificant amount of money just by taking that one extra step. So number 4, if you've watched any of these before, I'm a huge fan of HSAs. If you're not utilizing your HSA, you should be. It is a super tax efficient vehicle. If you are starting to significantly grow your HSA, right? You've just been stocking away cash every year and it's now exceeded what your deductible is. You have the ability to be investing that money. So I get questions about this all the time. Advisors aren't allowed to get paid on it, so I don't have any vested interest in this. I just know that it's such a tax efficient vehicle. It's crazy not to do it. So you can keep some of it in cash and then everything above that invest it, and it's growing tax deferred. If spent for retirement or beyond age 65, it's treated the same as your 401k. If spent for any medical expenses, it's tax free. Such a great benefit. And then I added in a bonus on tax confusion, and that is that tax efficiency is different than tax effectiveness. So you can do things super tax efficient. Say that I have an extra $5,000 per year. I'm just socking that into a Roth IRA. Well, if the $5,000 eventually is going to be used for a house or used for a car or used for a vacation, that's a terrible spot to be dropping it, right? If you're using a tax efficient vehicle that's earmarked for not what you're going to spend the money on, you're just putting yourself in a spot of triggering penalties. So 401k, IRA, 403bs are really great ways to save for retirement. 529s are really great ways to save for education. They're all really terrible ways to save for what they're not intended for. So don't just max out tax efficient vehicles because they're tax efficient. If you're going to use it for something different, don't put yourself in a spot of penalties. So as we talked about, the 5 bullets to dodge: outdated beneficiaries, really actionable. Go look at what your beneficiary is, or just get a new blank form and fill it out and make sure it's up to date. Second, don't be loaning away your retirement. Current you is going to love it, but future you is really going to suffer off of it, and they're the same person. Third, don't become nearsighted on your investments. Along the same lines, don't treat retirement that near and as the end. Recognize your time frame. And then 5th, make sure you're doing things tax appropriately. So happy to take questions. As I like to point out to people, it's one of the opportunities for free, objective, qualified advice. Every employee of our clients, any employee of the companies that we work with, has access to free, objective, qualified advice from financial planners. So take advantage of it. Feel free to use the Q&A button on here, or if you want, you can reach out to me directly, cgingerich@sagerutty.com, or my phone is 585-512-2385. I'll pause a second for questions, but before that, as always, is thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for the business and trust that you place with me and with Sage Rutty. we certainly take that very seriously. I appreciate your time and hope that everyone has a very safe and happy and healthy holiday season.
Mhm.